and Economic Development, Henry Musasi's at Koro ceremonial grounds, read to us the national.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
Hello, good morning, and thank you so much for being with us on UBC TV. Welcome to the Extra. I'm Robert Chiravo, Nyonyinton Math 2, or before, because the budget, it's a process. We put in our input. By the time it is read, 90% of it is known, or 99% to Ugandans who choose to interest themselves. They know how much we are looking at, already 84.3 trillion shillings. How much are we going to collect? The new taxes therein. So everything is relatively known. But now, today, we want to look deeper into this budget in the name of social protection. And with me on set, I have Gloria Nakajubi, who is the Advocacy and Communication Lead, Uganda Parliamentary Forum on Social Protection. She's with me, and we want to look at the gains or the wins and the misses in this financial year 2026-2027. What is there or what isn't there as far as social protection is concerned? Nakajubi, you're most welcome.
Thank you very much, Chiravo. I'm very glad to be here.
Now, to begin with and laying context of what you're going to be discussing, when we talk about the Parliamentary Forum on Social Protection, what is this?
Well, the Forum on Social Protection is an advocacy platform in Parliament. Yeah, so we bring together legislators, both sitting and former members of parliament who have an interest on social protection. And the idea is that as they do their work of legislation, as they do their work of monitoring and oversight, as they do their work of budget appropriation, they actually look at this from a social protection lens. And so in there we're trying to see that the different ongoing interventions, social protection interventions, are well funded. In there we're looking at ensuring that we have a progressive policy and legislative framework for social protection in the country, but also ensuring that as they go out to carry out their oversight roles, they also look at the ongoing social protection interventions to make sure that they are being implemented as they should be. So really we are currently, well, that was looking at the figures of the 11th Parliament, because right now we are really just starting, but in the 11th Parliament we had over 500 members of Parliament who were subscribing to the Forum on Social Protection. So that shows you the interest, because social protection is really about the people. It is beyond parties. Yeah, it is a cross-party issue. So about the people and making sure that our population, people do not fall deeper into poverty, but also do not fall into poverty. So that is really about social protection. And it, quite understandably, is that worth noting is that social protection, we are all vulnerable. Yeah, and we try to make sure that every Ugandan, there are interventions in place that ensure that every Ugandan, from the time you are born to the time you exit this earth, there is some kind of program in place that ensures that when a shock hits, you are protected. So that is really what we do as the Parliamentary Forum on Social Protection.
Now, one would also want to understand, when we talk about social protection, most of the times we think of older persons.
Yes, yes.
That, well, once I'm aged, I no longer work, I'm very vulnerable, and therefore social protection comes in.
Yeah.
So briefly but expansively explain to us social protection in Uganda's context, because maybe other countries there are very many forms of social protection, but please come back home and explain that.
Yeah, so I mean, like you rightly state, a lot of times we think social protection older persons. We think social protection, SAGE. But yes, that is partly true, but the bigger conversation is that social protection really looks at these private and public interventions that are put in place to ensure that people live dignified lives. And so we look at social protection from a life cycle perspective. So you're looking at children, because even as children, they are shocks that hit children at that age. Then you come to adolescents, you also look at the shocks in that particular age category. Then you have workers, also have there are shocks in there and vulnerabilities. Then you come again to the older persons. So it is really not about the older persons, but you can rightly understand where Ugandans would look at social protection as an older person's thing, because for the most of the interventions we've been having as a country, they have been targeting or trying to intervene around old age poverty. Case in point is the Senior Citizens Grant. That is one of the biggest cash transfer program that we have in the country, and that is more on the non-contributory spectrum of social protection. But also social protection has the contributory part of it. So here you're looking at interventions such as the NSSF. You're looking at other, a lot of times really it's mostly private-led interventions, because there's not so much more around government interventions that are contributory. So for government, it is mostly social assistance schemes. So you're looking at I talked about the Senior Citizens Grant, and then right now, of course, we're talking about the Child Disability Benefit. So there is social assistance, but also there is social insurance. So where you're looking at contributory, the people who are getting the benefit are able to contribute to these schemes. Actually now, right now, one thing to point out is that the public service pension scheme, which used to be non-contributory then, is now going to be contributory. So all that is social protection. So depending on where you are at in the life cycle, there should be interventions that make sure that you do not fall into poverty, or you're protected against shocks.
Now, that said, we go to the budget, the topic of discussion this morning. When you look at social protection and the budget allocation, please, let's first know what was in for you as gains.
Yeah, I mean, of course, when you look at the shilling 84 trillion budget, I mean, you get excited. Yeah, you get excited and you're thinking, okay, what exactly is in it for me? Or you start to think the money has come, as our former minister used to say. But I think quite more specifically for social protection is that, yes, at the end of the day, we want to look at the budget holistically, because social protection does not stand alone. So you want to look at the budget holistically. But to be more specific for the benefit of this discussion is that in there we have, as the minister read, an allocation of 173 billion shillings going towards social protection. And definitely the detail really is what tells the story. So like they say, the devil is in the detail. And so to break down that particular budget, what is in there, of that 173 billion budget, we are looking at the 121 billion shillings that goes to the senior citizens grant. 121 billion shillings going to the senior citizens grant. That is the grant that targets older persons 80 years and above.
Where they get their 25,000.
Where they get their 25,000. I mean, consistently, that takes care of their issues.
I think they get it per quarter.
They get it now per quarter.
That is some
75,000 shillings.
Yes.
So, so we have that 121 billion shillings of that budget, and then of course in there we have a 15. I think the new thing that we see for us, the biggest win in this budget is the 15 billion shillings, 15.5 billion shillings that is going to go towards the child disability benefit. A new intervention that government has actually taken up. It's a very,
you people, you've
very
advocated for that money.
Very historic.
I reached the point of even almost getting tired of regarding that child disability fund. My God.
Yeah, very historic. And I think for us really, we want to appreciate government, we want to appreciate Parliament, we want to appreciate the Ministry of Finance for making sure that they provide this, for me I call it foundational funding for the child disability benefit, because at the end of the day, the budget requirement for that particular program is rather high. So for us to start off, I think is a very good step in the right direction, because then we know that we can progressively increase on that budget. So we want to thank you very much. Of course, you are partners that, like you indicate, that you kept on hosting us to give us space for advocacy, and we want to say that yes, you didn't do this in vain, that the fruits are actually here. So I think we're very excited, because now we know that households with children with disabilities are now able to get a bit of relief. Yeah, because under this program, we're looking at having families or children with disabilities getting about 100,000 shillings per month to support them to be able to access, to support in terms of care, but also to help them really with the daily living, really. And of course, you're targeting children, but at the end of the day, this goes to the caregiver, yeah, because these are the people that take charge of these children.
And I'm sure it's a very good move, because families per month, 100,000, it may not be much. Yes. But indeed it is much.
Yes, it is.
Because one thing I've learned, I stand to be corrected, but over time in my career as a journalist, a field man, I used to operate so much times in those high poverty areas. I remember one time I was in northern Uganda in a time of nodding disease. Now, what I witnessed in northern Uganda, I was there with Honorable, I forget, Honorable, I remember the name. Now, I saw and I noticed, I don't know why, that's why I said I stand to be corrected, that many children who have disabilities are from poor families. I stand to be corrected, but I've come to ask myself, to the extent that sometimes I even put it to God in prayer, saying, Lord, this is a poor family. Not to say that the rich deserve them, but then you wonder the family is poor. They're the ones that have a child with a disability. So 100 may seem little, but where it is going to address those challenges.
Exactly.
I've traversed almost a half of this country, but I've come to have that unanswered question. Why do you find these children in the families of sometimes very poor people?
Yeah, you know, you're really not like, you're very right, because there is a very big correlation between poverty and then disability. And statistics actually shows that households with children with disability post higher rates of poverty than those than the rest of the population. And really sometimes it's for obvious reasons, because a lot of times the people that would ideally be engaged in productive activities have to then take on care roles. So you have labor that is withdrawn from the economy. Yeah, so for instance, mothers and sometimes fathers may not be able to actively participate in the economy because they have this child to take care of. This child has extra care needs. So I think a lot of times that's where the challenge comes in. But yes, you're right that households with children with disabilities tend to post higher rates of poverty than the rest of the population. So for us, really, this is a major win in this budget, and I think it actually speaks to, because one of the biggest components that has taken the biggest share of the budget is the human capital development component. Yes, so having this grant in a way is actually human capital development in action, because here you are looking at inclusiveness. Yes, so you're looking at a budget that is actually not leaving behind a certain category of the human capital. So you have these children now going to be more engaged. Maybe they're actually going to be able to be, for those who can, facilitated to stay in school, and that in a way helps to improve their potential at living their full potential later in life. So I think for me this is actually where human capital development speaks, making sure that the most vulnerable in our communities are not left behind, and that I think for me is a very, very good indicator from government, and you know, looking at the fact that this is the first budget for the 5-year term of the NRM, that also speaks a lot, because then it shows us that where are the priorities. Yeah, so I think, and then again to also, like I said, these things really are interlinked. Yeah, so you're thinking about wealth creation programs, and I think for me, again, that also speaks towards the most vulnerable, where the president wants the people that are outside the money economy to be targeted. And again, you're looking at the most vulnerable. Who are those people that are out of the money economy? Like you rightly stated, you'll find that families, households with children with disabilities are also those outside the money economy. So the question is, can they be deliberately targeted so that then they do not again fall through the cracks? So I think it is a very, very big win for us. Once again, I want to say thank you very much, our stakeholders, for giving us the space to speak for the most vulnerable in our communities. The other win in this budget is the money that is going to the special grant for persons with disabilities. Yes, so that is also an ongoing program. It is not new, so at least we know there is sustainability. And
a good thing, it's a grant.
Yes, it is a grant, sustained financing.
All they need is proper organization.
So there are most of the other, because it is 173 billion shillings. So if you break it down a bit, there is also admin cost in there. So you realize that, yeah, with the child disability benefit, with the senior citizens grant, with there is also under there is the youth livelihood program. So you realize that yes, by the end of the day that would be already exhausted. So but again, on the other side, for me, hopefully that is the next question you are coming to, the misses on those same aspects that we are talking about.
Before we go to the misses, a quick one. We're excited with allocations. Yeah. But my biggest question is identifying the right people, the right beneficiaries, most of the disability fund, because when you talk about the the person's grant. For it, it's clear.
Yeah, it's clear. NERA data.
And everything is very, very clear. Now, the excitement, we talk about the elders' grant. They come together, 5 or plus, organize themselves, they show what they are going to do, they get the money. But this disability fund, how are we sure it's going to have an impact in improving the livelihoods? It may not transform, but improve. Maybe taking this child, if there is money and this person has a medical visit once in a month, and 100,000 comes, 100,000 can take this boy for their drugs, this child for their drugs, to pick them at the government facility. That may not increase wealth, but it improves the livelihood of this child since they are able to stick and continue with their medication. So, identifying the right beneficiaries is something I also want to interest myself in. If you are at liberty or in the know. Yes, I think that's a very, very important aspect of this whole conversation, because at the end of the day we have 15 billion shillings, but the question is for who? But I know that the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, that is charged with social protection programming in this country, has already developed guidelines. I may not have the detail of the guidelines because they have just recently been approved. So they have developed guidelines that are going to be followed to be able to track, to trace, and be able to identify the exact or the beneficiaries for this particular grant. There are a number of international standards that are going to be followed to identify who is eligible and who is not. I mean, of course, it is a lot of times we look at just physical disability, but disability presents in different forms. So all those are things, there are experts at the Ministry of Gender that are actually going to undertake this task to be able to identify these families, but also informed by the data that we have available. We have UBOS data. Of course, the questions usually are for UBOS data. It does not specifically point to where this person is. So that's why we have these guidelines, but also the ministry intends to work very closely with the lower local government, the parish at the parish level, and also one key component, key structure that the ministry is looking at the civil society organizations, because these are closer to the communities at the parish level. So they're trying to see that how do we get down to the households to make sure that we identify these populations. Like you state, these are already excluded populations. So if you're not very deliberate, you're going to miss them. So that's why they're taking this intervention down to the parish, down to the village, to make sure that these households are identified and then they're able to be targeted for this intervention. So for now, really, that's where we are. The guidelines are out. I may not be able to detail what is in there, but I know the guidelines are out and they have been approved, so we should be able to see what is in there. And for us, of course, as the Parliamentary Reform on Social Protection, having been advocated for this, we are going to be able to follow up, monitor, and make sure that actually these people that we've been fighting for receive this much needed intervention. Well, at that point, let me go for a short break.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala, this is Good Morning Uganda Extra. The World Football Spectacle is here! From the vibrant cities of Canada, the passion of Mexico, and the grand stages of the United States, the FIFA World Cup 2026 is set to ignite the planet! Every goal, every save, every moment of glory, live and unforgettable on UBC TV and all its radio stations.
From the streets of Rio to the night and day.
Follow Africa's finest, football's biggest stars, and the battle for the most converted trophy in world football.
1, 3, 1,
Where legends rise, dreams come alive, and history is made. UBC is the home of the FIFA World Cup 2026. Stay Stay tuned to UBC TV and all UBC's radio stations, bringing the world to Uganda, one match at a time.
Exercise can't be sustained. Eating can't be stopped. It's even harder to lose weight. Come and give it a try. Ginshikang L-carnitine chromium capsules. Plant extract, scientific ratio. Take 3 capsules each time. The active ingredient accelerates fat burning. Eat twice a day. Don't take a detour. Weight loss starts now. Ginshikang L-carnitine with chromium capsules helps you stay in shape. Please follow medical advice when taking this product.
It's our mission to secure your money.
Protecting your money is as important as earning it. It is for this reason that the Deposit Protection Fund of Uganda, DPF, was established by the government of Uganda to provide deposit protection to customers of regulated financial institutions. In the unlikely event that your commercial bank, credit institution or microfinance deposit-taking institution fails, the DPF will pay you up to 10 million Uganda shillings. Keep your personal information such as national identification number, mobile phone or an alternative bank account updated with your banker. Terms and conditions apply. For more information, contact DPF at Aha Towers, Plot 7 Lodel Road, Kampala. Call 0312-206-400 or visit our website at www.dpf.or.ug.
We protect your money. Protection Fund of Uganda.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda Extra.
Welcome back from that break and thank you for being with us on UBC TV. Still discussing matters of social protection, looking at the wins and misses in the financial year budget of 2026-2027. And I'm still with Gloria Nakajubi, who is the Advocacy and Communications Lead, Uganda Parliamentary Forum on Social Protection. Now, before we went for the break, she had mentioned areas where they scored. That is, seeing that the SAGE, there is some money there, the disability grant, and also the grant that goes to elder persons for social economic empowerment. Now let's look at what was missed in regards to social protection.
Yeah, what was missed? So still on the senior citizens grant, we know that in September last year, government or cabinet moved a resolution, resolved that the age for the senior citizens grant should be reduced to 65 years, but also the grant value should be increased to 35,000 shillings. So, and that, the decision indicated that that will begin in this financial year that we are going to start, 2026-2027. But unfortunately, and that is a miss in this budget, that we actually do not have that extra financing that is required to be able to actualize that decision by cabinet. So we needed an extra 252 billion shillings to be able to target the older persons 65 and above. So for this particular financial year, probably that would be another advocacy issue. Maybe it can come during but the biggest issue is that, yes, a decision was made, but the financing is not available to back it up. And that has been really one of the big challenges when it comes to social protection interventions. That we have all these big pronouncements that are usually made, but at the end of the day, they're not backed by financing, which becomes very, very challenging. Yeah, so that is one of the misses in this particular budget. And of course, the other thing that we miss in this budget is the fact that yes, we have these empowerment wealth creation programs that are going to receive a total of 2.1 trillion shillings, but we do not see a clear link between those programs and social protection, or more specifically social security. Why? Because at the end of the day, as we have seen when they're implementing PDM, we do not see the design showing quite deliberately that these people that you're targeting, when you empower them, when you improve their incomes, are there avenues that they can actually be able to put aside some money for in cases when they get a shock? So that has been missing, because this is already taxpayers' money. You don't want to have these people to miss participating in social security schemes when they can, and then at the end of the day, you want to, when they finally hit the age when they're supposed to get SAGE, then they have to graduate to SAGE. And yet you could have targeted them at the time when you were supporting them to earn an income to be able then to save for themselves. Yeah, so I think that's one of the misses that we see in this budget. And then also, the other missing component in this budget is that we see, because there's something we talk about as shock responsive social protection. Government has allocated some money towards climate disasters, disaster preparedness. We have about, I think, 490 billion shillings and another 300 billion that is going towards that particular aspect. But again, in there, we miss the link between that and social protection. Because when we talk about a comprehensive social protection system, it's about having this system in place so that when a shock hits, for instance, floods, and now in the case of the senior citizens grant, this grant should be is flexible enough to take up that new need that comes with a shock. And this particular money would have been then invested in making sure that the system we have right now is strong enough to respond to shocks, climate and environmental shocks when they hit at that time. But we don't see that link coming out quite clearly. So we're trying to say that this budget allocations should not be detached from each other, because some of these things actually bring results when they are interconnected. Yeah, we're not talking about shocks and then you're ignoring social protection. So we need to see the budget speaking to each other. These items, budget items, speaking to each other, and that's why you realize that we will be talking about, let's say, we did a quick calculation. When you look at social protection, it takes, well, you have the Human Capital Development Program taking about 13.6 trillion shillings of the budget, which is about 6%. But when you come down to more specifically to a social protection component, it has, yes, the 173 billion, which is just about 1.3% of that 13 billion. Yeah. And we're not saying that because in there is, under human capital development, there is health, there is education, there is water and sanitation. All those things, at the end of the day, social protection facilitates the outcomes. It boosts the outcomes from, for instance, education. It boosts outcomes from health. So it is important that we see those interlinkages coming through. So I think that's where we have some of those gaps. How do we make sure that each component of the budget, those that have that speak to each other or have stronger interlinkages, are actually linked together and are able to be implemented in such a way that you boost the outcomes, because then you are able to see your investment, you're able to see returns on your investment. So without social protection, the human capital development component then becomes hanging. So social protection is like the foundation. So we needed to see that well invested in so that it can hold the other human capital development components of health, nutrition and education. So I think that's also the other myth that we have in this budget. But again, to speak to the interconnectedness of these items in the budget is that we are looking at where they have, for instance, increased the threshold for payee. Yeah, so you have those that are under 335 out of the tax bracket. I think that's also a very, very good move, because at the end of the day, you have Ugandans having more disposable income left towards them, for those who are in the lower income bracket. So you don't want to have the population that is already earning little money again being taxed, because then you make them vulnerable. And then so that kind of, in a way, relieves that particular population category from social assistance. So that population category now does not need social assistance, because they have at least a bit more disposable income to themselves. So I think that is also the other key win that we see in this budget, and also really making sure that we understand these things in a way that does not show social protection as a standalone component. No, social protection does not stand alone. It does provide a facilitative role to the rest of the budget outcomes. And of course, if we are looking at we see, I think government is looking at investing in more money in circles, facilitate those kinds of loose associations. So that as well also is good, because again it builds resilience in communities. It builds resilience in communities. We've also seen the budget speaking to interventions around the youth, because like we said, social protection is about a life cycle. So you want to
from when you're born till when you die.
So we want to see kind of a map out what are those, what is there for the youth, what is there for the workers, what is there for the older persons, what is there for the young people. And now when it comes to the youth, we've seen that yes, wealth creation programs definitely are going to target young people. And again, as I already highlighted, that we need to see those programs, we need to see PDM being very deliberate to make sure that social security is embedded in its design, in its implementation, so that you don't have these young people after working, after getting money, they are not saving anywhere. And one of the big avenues that we have right now is the NSSF Smart Life Flexi. That targets it's more voluntary contribution. So you can invest your money in NSSF from as low as 5,000 shillings. So these young people that are receiving 1 million shillings to start businesses, you can get part of that and start investing and saving that in Smart Life Flexi with NSSF. So there are all those avenues. And then of course the informal sector. We talk about the informal sector as one of those labor populations that are always left out when it comes to social security. So we want to see in the budget, if you're targeting this informal sector population, can we still see a way that we design social protection, tailored social protection schemes where this informal sector can participate? So for me, I think yes, we may not have like expressly stated allocations towards social protection interventions, but some of the things that actually government is setting out to do are going to facilitate the things that we're looking at as resilience, improving incomes, and also making sure that Ugandans live dignified lives. So yes, by and large, we did have great wins in the budget. There is more that definitely still needs to be done, but I think for now we can celebrate that this budget at least speaks to some of those critical population categories that are most vulnerable.
Well, very interesting that social protection is something, when you look at those allocations, only if they can reach to the targeted person, then we shall have this transformation. There was a time when social protection wasn't taken as a priority in our budget allocations, but when we see these improvements, most of the disability fund coming in here, yes, the stage there is that challenge of the age being lowered, numbers have increased, but not commensurate with the allocations there. Now I must let you go, but before I do so, let me just give you a minute or two for your parting shot.
Yes, again, I want to appreciate government for making sure that we have this historic child disability benefit going to start this financial year. I think this is a very, very great time for us to see, especially for us in the social protection advocacy space. But again, as they say, we keep asking for more. The 15.5 billion shillings is not enough to be able to target all the children with disabilities in this country. And because at the end of the day, sometimes the question is, when does a child with disability stop being a child? Is it at 18? Because we've also seen 18-year-olds still being children. So do we stop at 18, or it continues until for the rest of their lives? So there are all those conversations, but I think this is a very good start. And for us as a forum on social protection, we commit to continue doing advocacy, especially for the most vulnerable in our communities, but also for the rest of Ugandans. And also we urge government that can we make sure that this huge workforce, the young population, as you empower the young population, we make sure that we have created avenues for them to participate in social security schemes, so that at the end of the day, they do not fall back onto social assistance. So let us target them early, let us encourage them to participate in social security, but also let us make sure that we create awareness. Let them know why you need, for instance, to save with NSSF. Let us them know why it is important for you to have like some kind of a scheme, like health insurance scheme. But also again, maybe to really note that right now we are looking forward to see that government at the end of the day passes the National Health Insurance Scheme bill. Because yes, we keep saying that we can access health care free of charge, but is it actually free of charge? Is it accessible? Is it of quality? Because at the end of the day, we are actually still spending. We have a very high out-of-pocket expenditure. So why don't we then provide a clear guideline of how people spend? Because we are spending. So I think we need to have that discussion, and we're actually very excited about the new Minister of Health, Dr. Ayume. He's very, very good with health insurance, and we are hoping that that is going to be one of his priorities, making sure that after 20 years of discussing the National Health Insurance Scheme, we can see it come to pass. It may not come in the way it is designed now. Can we come up with innovative ways? If that cannot work, but can we find innovative ways? Rwanda started with relying on community-based health insurance schemes, and in a way, progressively, those were then integrated into a national scheme. Can we start there? Because we have some of those community-based health insurance schemes ongoing in this country. So let's be more deliberate to make sure that more Ugandans are protected, but also majority, the entire population actually has a way that it is supporting each other, because that is how social protection works.
Well, thank you so much, my viewer and my guest, that is Gloria Nakajubi from the Advocacy and Communications Lead Uganda Parliamentary Forum. Thank you so much for your time, and of course to government. We had talked. We had spoken regarding the disability fund. Now that it is there, money has been allocated. My prayer is that the right intended beneficiaries receive this money. See you next week, the good Lord willing. Have the best of your weekend. Good morning.
Live from UBC Studios in Kampala. This is Good Morning Uganda